An old woman kneels by her bed every single night for 50 years, whispering the same prayer into the darkness, and heaven stays silent, completely silent. But what happens the night she takes her final breath will shake you to your core, because sometimes God's timing isn't about us at all. It's about something so much bigger. And this is the true story of a mother who refused to give up and a son who came home one day too late. There's this small town tucked away in the American Midwest, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where church bells ring every Sunday morning and neighbors still leave their doors unlocked. And in this town lived a woman named Hannah, 83 years old, with snow-white hair and hands so weathered they shook every time she clasped them together to pray. Her little house sat on the edge of town, kind of isolated, kind of forgotten. But if you drove past it late at night, you'd always see one thing: a single candle burning in her window, every single night without fail. The locals knew her routine better than their own. They'd see her every evening as the sun went down, lighting that candle, kneeling beside this old wooden bed that creaked under her weight. And they'd hear her whisper the same words she'd been whispering for half a century: "Lord, please bring my Samuel home, wherever he is right now. Keep him safe, soften his heart. Let him find his way back to me before I die." 50 years of the same prayer. 50 years of tears soaking into that old wooden floor. 50 years of nothing but silence in return. Samuel was 20 years old when he left, and Hannah remembered that night like it was yesterday. The yelling, the accusations flying back and forth. The sound of the front door slamming so hard that picture frames crashed off the walls. Her only child, her baby boy, had looked at her with these eyes full of pure rage and said words that would echo in her soul forever. "You destroyed my life with your rules, and your church and your controlling. I never want to see your face again, never." She chased him out into the pouring rain, screaming his name until her voice gave out completely. But Samuel just disappeared into that storm and never once looked back, not once. For the next 5 decades, Hannah waited. She wrote letters to old addresses that bounced back. She stopped strangers on the street, asking if they'd seen a man matching his description. And she kept his bedroom exactly the way he left it, untouched, frozen in time like a museum to her broken heart. Dust gathering on his high school trophies and his old baseball glove. The townspeople stopped asking about Samuel years ago. You'd hear them whispering at the grocery store, "Poor Hannah, still praying for a ghost. He's probably dead by now. Why can't she just let it go and move on?" Even Pastor Thomas, the man who had baptized Samuel when he was just a tiny baby, gently tried to tell her that maybe, just maybe, God's answer was the silence itself, that maybe she'd find peace if she just accepted that Samuel was gone for good. Hannah would listen politely, nod her head, smile softly, and then she'd go right back home and light that candle again, same prayer, same stubborn hope. One morning in late autumn, Hannah didn't get out of bed. And that was unusual because this woman had been an early riser for 40 years straight. Her neighbor Mary, this sweet young woman who checked on her regularly, found her still lying there, weak and barely conscious. Mary panicked and called the doctor, who came rushing over and examined Hannah with these sad, knowing eyes, and after a long silence he pulled Mary aside and said quietly, "Her heart is giving out. It could be a few days, could be a few hours. There's no way to know." Word spread through that small town like wildfire. And by that evening, Hannah's little cottage was filled with neighbors, people who had watched her pray for decades, now sitting vigil as her breathing got shallower and shallower. Pastor Thomas sat right beside her bed holding her frail hand, and he leaned in close and said, "Hannah, is there anything you need, anything at all that would bring you some peace right now?" Hannah's eyes slowly opened, and for just a moment they had that old fire in them. That strength that had carried her through 50 years of unanswered prayers, and she whispered, "I need nothing. I've prayed my prayer. For 50 years I've trusted. I don't need to see the answer to believe it's coming." Tears started streaming down Pastor Thomas's face, and he said, "But Hannah, what if Samuel never comes? What if this is it?" She squeezed his hand with surprising strength and smiled this peaceful, almost knowing smile. And she said, "Then I will have spent 50 years talking to my father about my son." That's not wasted time, Pastor. That's love, and love is never ever wasted, not a single word of it. The whole room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop, and that candle in the window kept flickering. Hannah's voice got even softer, and she continued, "When Samuel was 3 years old, he got terribly sick. Fever so high I thought I was going to lose him. I prayed all night long, begged God to save my baby, and by morning that fever broke. I thanked God for answering my prayer. But here's what I learned. I didn't pray because I knew the fever would break. I prayed because prayer was all I had left. Faith isn't some kind of deal you make with God where you do your part and He does. His faith is trusting even when the fever doesn't break, even when the door stays locked, even when the silence stretches on for 50 years. She looked toward that candle, the same flame she had lit 18,000 nights in a row, and she said, "I don't know where my Samuel is tonight. I don't know if he ever thinks about me. But I know this. Every single prayer I've prayed has been heard. Whether the answer comes in my lifetime or 100 years from now, I will have been faithful, and faithfulness is its own kind of miracle." The hours crawled by slowly. Hannah drifted in and out of consciousness, but her lips never stopped moving, still praying, still hoping. Just before midnight, Hannah opened her eyes one last time. She looked around at all the faces gathered in that tiny room, and she whispered so quietly they had to lean right up close to hear. "Tell him, if he ever comes home, tell him I never stopped, not for one single night. Tell him I loved him with every breath I ever took. Tell him he was always, always welcome home." Then she closed her eyes, smiled this soft, peaceful smile, and spoke her final words, "Father, I trust you, even now, even still." That candle flickered once, then burned steady and bright, and Hannah was gone. At that exact same moment, 300 miles away, there's this old man sitting alone in a dingy bus station at midnight. His name was Samuel, 70 years old now, with gray hair and a face that looked like it had been through hell and back. In his shaking hands he's holding this crumpled old photograph. It's faded and worn from being touched too many times. And it shows a young woman holding a baby, both of them smiling with pure joy, his mother himself, a whole lifetime ago. For 50 years, Samuel had been running. He tried everything to bury the guilt, drown out the memories, forget those horrible words he screamed at his mother in anger. But lately her face kept showing up in his dreams, haunting him, calling him home. 3 days earlier, something inside him just broke. He couldn't run anymore. So he went and bought a bus ticket back to that small town he swore he'd never see again. The bus pulled into town at noon the next day. Samuel stepped off on legs that could barely hold him up, shaking, terrified, and he stopped this young woman walking by and asked for directions to Hannah's cottage. The woman's face completely changed when she heard the address, and she said, "Wait, are you Samuel?" He nodded, couldn't even speak, and tears just poured down her cheeks as she said, "I'm Mary. I was with her. She passed away last night, just before midnight." Samuel's legs gave out, and he collapsed right there on the sidewalk. A broken 70-year-old man who had finally come home exactly 1 day too late. Mary knelt down beside him and whispered, "She left a message for you. She said to tell you she never stopped praying. Not for one single night. 50 years, Samuel, 50 years she waited. She said you were always welcome home. She said she loved you with every single breath." Then Mary pressed something into his trembling hands. It was the candle from his mother's window, and it was still warm. Samuel stayed in that town. He moved into his mother's cottage, slept in the bedroom she had kept ready for him for 50 years. And every single night he lit that candle and continued the prayer his mother had started. He became the candle in the window. At her grave he placed a simple headstone with just these words carved into it. She prayed, "I came, love outlasted everything." Here's what this story teaches us. Faith is not a transaction. It's not some guarantee that if you pray hard enough or long enough, you'll get exactly what you want, exactly when you want it. Faith is this sacred stubbornness to keep believing when everything around you is screaming, "Stop, give up, it's over." Hannah never got to see her prayer answered with her own eyes, but her prayer was answered just one day after her final breath. And maybe that was the whole point. Maybe you've been praying for something for years. Maybe heaven feels silent. Maybe you're wondering if your words even matter, if anyone's even listening up there. But they do matter. Every single prayer is heard. Every tear is counted. Every act of faith sends ripples into eternity that you may never get to see with your own eyes. Don't stop praying. Don't stop believing. Don't stop hoping. Because the answer might be traveling toward you right now. It might be sitting in a bus station 300 miles away, getting ready to come home. Your faith is not wasted, not a single word of it. The candle is still burning, and heaven is still listening.